ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ। ਜਪ ਆਦ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। This week we're going to go through chapter 8 of Saruktavali. And chapter 8 is all about Uddam. Uddam is the word for effort. And so this chapter is all about making effort, and it's a very interesting chapter that I think everyone will get a lot out of. So in the introduction of this chapter, we will explore what the fruits of Uddam are. And Bhai Singh Ji explained this in a little bit more depth in their Vyakya and shared that there are 4 types of kirpa. And so those 4 types of kirpa, one is Akal Purkh's kirpa. So for example, they created this creation and then they gave us this human life. So Akal Purkh di kirpa. Guru's kirpa, for example, in the history that we have, in the wisdom they depart, and also in the Gurbani that we've been given. In Shabad kirpa, for example, even in Gurbani, how it's always just showing us the past. So Shabad di kirpa, and also in not even in Gurbani. And then the Jeev's kirpa, so the self that is in us, the part of the jyot that is within us, it's kirpa. And so Bhai Singh Ji really nicely explained that Uddam is that 4th type of kirpa. It is practically applying, the Jeev inside us is practically applying what is being learned. And that is what Uddam is. So in this chapter, we will learn what to make effort towards, and it's a very poetical type of chapter, and what we should not put it towards. Overall, we should make effort for our man to make it so that we find it beautiful, to make effort towards that one effort with which all other efforts are diminished. And so, of course, that one effort is towards Nam. Any questions with this part here? I guess just, really keep this remembered in your mind throughout the chapter, that Uddam is all about the Jiskirpa. So with effort, we start with examples. So with effort, we gain Maya, we gain money, we gain things. However, that person is praised in the world that then surrenders that Maya and that money rather than keeping it to themselves. So yes, with effort, we can gain lots of things, but you are praised when you learn to tyag it, to surrender it and to give it, rather than it's great that you're just making effort towards collecting it. Next, by our past karam, we have developed our man and our intellect, and our current karam, what we are applying in this life, what we are learning, what vidya we're learning. And when we're applying that, that will also come forth in the efforts that we're showing in our life. Any questions there? This next part, then Kaviji talks about 9 things that constantly increase by nature. First thing is Uddam itself, because once you start making effort, then the momentum itself starts taking over, and you just keep starting to make more and more effort towards one thing. And then there's some, really interesting other examples, but it really gives you an idea of what effort and the nature of effort. For example, a rash, once you start itching it, the itch just keeps getting more and more itchy. It doesn't stop itching. And so that is one example of something that's constantly increasing. Feuds and conflicts, if you start it, it's not like it stops. You just keep adding more and more into that. It keeps getting bigger. Alcoholism is another big one. Once alcoholism starts, it just gets worse. Gambling, just the same, it just gets worse. And, people write off their whole marriage and their house in gambling. So it starts off with something small, but it eventually just gets worse and worse and worse. And then the word preet is used, but in this context, it's more like worldly love. So like that more the attachment style of things. Gluttony, so food, all the, brunches we go to and lunches and dinners and that side of things, the gluttony of I want to try this type of food and that type of drink and all those different flavors, that never ends as well. Sexual desires, once we start going in towards that side of things, that also never ends. It only just increases and increases and increases. And sleep, the desire to sleep. Once we start sleeping in, we just want to keep sleeping in more and more and more. It just gets delayed and delayed and delayed. So these are 9 things that they've said that they only increase when we, feed them, when we water them. And so they've stated that the only thing that we should really be watering is the uddam. Everything else we should be really, really mindful of, especially because as soon as we water any of them, the impact of that is instant. For example, intoxication, like when you have an addiction and stuff, it comes on quite rapidly. None of these things increase gradually over time. All of these things are quite rapid in the way that they increase. And so what thing should we be focusing on is uddam itself, not on all these other stuff. Any questions with this bit? Okay. So let's have a look at the nature of uddam. Uddam itself is a neutral force. It's like a Shakti. It's a Shakti within us. And when we use it towards good, it's a great friend of ours. But if it is used towards bad, then it is our greatest enemy. It's a Shakti of our body that when it aids us, then it's well. But it's harmful when it's going towards all the bad deeds. So whenever there are good deeds, we need to run and complete them. But whenever there is a bad deed, we should delay it, neglect it, and hence gradually avoid it. So it's kind of like the connotation in this text explains that uddam should be kind of, think of it like water. That should be watered into all the good stuff, and you should restrain watering all the other bad stuff, like all the other bad habits, rather than saying no. It's about watering it less and less, delaying it. There's a word tal, talna, it just means to delay it. And that was a big part of this text. Delaying, and eventually it gets less and less watered. And now the opposite, laziness, is a powerful enemy for us, right? Like laziness, we think of laziness as such a bad thing, but it can actually be such a good thing when we're using it against bad deeds. So for example, I'm not going to do that right now. And so eventually we forget it. And that same laziness then becomes a friend for us. So laziness is the opposite of uddam, but we can actually use it towards the deeds we don't want and delay those things. There's a lot over there. Does anyone have any thoughts about anything in general that they are kind of thinking, yes, I'm trying to be lazy towards certain aspects of my life and I'm trying to put more uddam towards certain aspects of my life? I'll just give an example then. So for example, I struggled with eating, right? Like eating out and stuff. And so I used laziness to my benefit by not buying certain type of things at the grocery store and by being lazy in the way that I was, not going out of my way to eat that type of food. And so I was delaying and delaying it, like, oh, I'll do it next time. I'll do it next time. I'll do it next time. Eventually, you grow out of that bad habit. And instead, you put effort towards the good stuff of, okay, but I'm going to buy these certain types of groceries and make sure they're always in the house. And so you've made effort towards the right things, you've delayed, you haven't actually stopped or said no. Like you haven't said, no, I'm not going to eat that. You've just delayed it, like, oh, I'll do it next time. I'll buy it next time. And then it works itself out. And I guess that strategy of applying uddam to the good things and applying laziness to the bad things can be used in so many things. Like there could be so many bad habits, like phone use, screen use, food, sleep, exercise, even like whatever it is, you can apply that strategy. It's a very practical strategy that really speaks volumes. The next part was, I guess, about then what are the things that we should prioritize our uddam, our effort towards. And so by Singh Ji explains that Vidya, service, business, farming, one should make these efforts straight away if their home is made, if their household income is made from one of these things, and do them quickly. We should not delay these. So we should not delay whatever our household income and the way that we sustain ourselves. If we delay this, it harms us. And then Panditji explains that just like the poison of a black serpent should be taken out quickly and immediately, because we know, for example, that black serpent, oh my gosh, is probably dangerous. I'm not even going to think if it's dangerous or not. I'm just going to pull it out without even thinking and give it medicine. That's the type of way that we should be thinking about our priority of our income. Whether it is through Vidya that we have our income, whether it's through a service type industry, if we have a service, if it's business, or if it's farming, whatever side, just do it without even thinking promptly. Any questions there?
How do you get yourself to just do it? Like, I know it's really simple to say, but I struggle with it so much. Like,
Yeah.
do
So
it.
yeah, I guess over here the idea more is, say if you have like 5 different things you're juggling, right? They're saying that whatever is sustaining your livelihood, prioritize that without like even thinking, like without even thinking of all the other things you're managing, do that one thing first. And so sometimes we start, especially in this day and age, overthinking like, oh, but you know, this thing is really important for me and that type of hobby is really important for me, or this thing is really important for me, but we should just, without thinking, be like, no, what is going to provide for me first? Let me do that first. And sometimes, of course, that's hard when we don't like to do it in preference of other things. But you really can overcome that habit. Like I personally have overcome that habit and we can. But I guess, yeah, in here, the main connotation of this part was that the livelihood or the income that we have in our household, that should be priority number 1. And then now there's some more types of life situations as well. So if a Gyaniji comes to our household, what type of uddam, what type of effort should we make? We make them nice food such as kheer. In comparison, a poor person should forget their own type of poverty and go towards farming. That's the effort they should be making. To a woman, the effort that we should be making is jewelry and good food and good clothes. And if we want to win over her forever, then provide wisdom. And yeah, just remember the context of these texts is back in the days when mostly men studied scripture. So we can always just apply it vice versa as well. And farming households that have any type of laziness or delay in their work, they will not be fruitful, and they should just complete their tasks promptly as soon as they come up, because otherwise things just start piling up. I grew up in a farming country. And so just the nature of those type of things, you know, when we're working more in office-based things, we kind of say like, oh, I can do that tomorrow. But in more farming households, when things are more immediate, like if you don't sow the food, then you don't get it watered, then you don't get it done, then it's just no good. So that specifically that type of household needs to be very much of like, let's just get it done today. Now, conflict, the way that we should make effort towards conflict is to just stay quiet. And remember Guru's bachan, we should not be actually making too much effort towards any other way. And so by Manpreet Singh Ji shared a story at this part. So the story goes like this. A woman had, a daughter-in-law was having daily fights with her mother-in-law. And, you know, the whole village knew about this because they would fight every single day. And so the daughter-in-law goes to a Babaji, and he was like a Gyani, he was quite wise, and he listened to the story, and then he told her, okay, I'm going to give you this piece of paper, and I'm going to say, like, whenever your mother-in-law fights with you, bite down on this in your mouth. And so when people usually go to like a Babaji in India, they just take it with like Sharda, like, okay, whatever you say, they don't really think too deeply about why. And so she's thinking there's some sort of like magical type of power in this or whatever it is. And she goes, okay, Sat Bhajan, whenever she fights, I'm just going to bite down on this paper in my mouth. So when the daughter returns home, the mother-in-law starts fighting straight away, like, where were you? What were you doing? And all this kind of stuff. And the daughter, she remembers what Babaji had said, and she puts the paper in her mouth. And so she's just keeping that Shraddha. And then the second day comes and the mother-in-law starts fighting again. Where are you going? What are you doing? And she puts the paper in her mouth. The third day comes and the mother-in-law starts fighting again. What are you doing? This and that. And so eventually, because the daughter-in-law is always putting this paper in her mouth, you know, she's not talking back because she's biting down on this paper. And then eventually the whole village starts thinking, you know what, we haven't been hearing the daughter-in-law speak back. And so it must be a fault of the mother-in-law. And so word spreads in the whole village that it's the mother-in-law that's at fault. Then the mother-in-law finds out that the village is talking about her like this. And so the mother-in-law starts pestering the daughter like, what did you do? Where did you go? Why are you not talking back? Eventually the daughter-in-law says, I went to a Babaji, and they taught me to keep this paper in my mouth. And so the mother-in-law is like hysterical. She goes to the Babaji, she starts fighting with him, like, what did you do? What's in this paper? What did you make her do? What kind of trance did you put her in on this paper? And then the Babaji says, did you even check the paper? And she said, no. So he gave the paper. They opened it together and there was nothing in it. And that's when the mother-in-law also realized that what the Babaji was teaching was just that the daughter was just biting down her mouth. There was nothing in the paper. And she realized that they had just been fueling their own conflict. So she actually went home, she hugged her daughter and said, from now on, we're not going to have fights anymore. And they lived happily ever after. No, so yeah, it was a nice story to kind of share about how for conflict we just bite it down, and usually it resolves itself. So then the next part was about Uddam towards Prabh, towards Akal Purkh, towards God, towards Dharam. If one wants to find Prabhji, then they should never stop with Uddam. And so, for example, we start delaying it saying, oh, chalo, Akal Purkh di marzi. If they desire, then I'll come to Sangat, right? If we can't do something, we'll say, oh, when Akal Purkh does Kirpa, then I'll learn how to do Kirtan. And we start having these type of thoughts. But the reality is that then we are not allowing that fourth type of Kirpa that we spoke about in the beginning, the Jeev's Kirpa, to allow that wisdom to be applied into life. That can only be done through effort. So when we keep saying, oh, when Guru's Kirpa happens, or Guru Kirpa Karno, I am just where Akal Purkh wants me to be, that's not the paradigm that we want to live in. We want to live in the Jeev's Kirpa of effort, wherever we are doing, putting effort in. So without effort, this is what Kaviji says, without effort, no one has found anything in the world. Even the smallest task, such as getting oil out of a sesame, requires effort. So how can you think that finding Prabh will not require effort? So this path is definitely full of effort, of the Jeev's Kirpa as well. Like that's what this is about. This is definitely something that I see a lot of as well. Like, you know, we're very easy to kind of neglect our own responsibility and duty. And so the way that Bhai Mampi Singh Ji explained this as the Jeev's own Kirpa, I felt that that was very nicely done. Then the next part is then about assessing Uddam. So before even applying ourselves, we really need to be considering what are the pros and cons of this effort that I'm going to put in. What are the benefits? What are the consequences? And also thinking about the benefits will help us think about and gain more momentum towards actually doing the good stuff. Whereas thinking about the consequences will appropriately make us more likely to delay the bad deeds as well. So planning before efforts is beneficial, as it will ensure we have a longer term benefit. And another example they gave was like, so I guess back in the days, they used to have a well for in case there's a fire. So it's kind of like if your house is on fire and there's a crisis, you're not going to start digging up a well. Like you have to kind of plan things beforehand, and doing things in the moment in a crisis is not a smart way to handle it. So an intelligent person always considers where to put their efforts. They will assess the outcome as either beneficial or harmful. If they see the outcome as harmful, they will not do it. They will not put any effort towards it. The effort with which only good can come from, then we should do that instantly without delay. And so there's a gray bit in between of the efforts that we think will most likely do good, then of course we do them. But the one that we definitely know will always bring good, we do that without delay. And what's that effort? Nam. Nam can only bring goodness. And so we should do that part of effort without delay. But in general, we should always consider what the fruits of our efforts will bring. Yeah, I think for us, a lot of this comes a lot more naturally with the type of upbringing and education system we have. But I guess it's really grounding to hear from Saruktavali text as well, so that we understand it's also towards like any aspect of life, not just in our professional lives as well. So then we have uddam towards like our livelihood, right? So the greatest type of being is one who earns honestly by themselves, rather than through charity, rather through dishonesty, or rather than relying on someone to provide for them. And so they've given these examples. One who relies on their father or their elders providing is considered like a slow or a half person. One who relies on their mother providing is considered lowly. One who relies on his wife or partner without making effort themselves, and so they're enjoying life on their partner's earnings, is considered the most lowly. So then they said that money is always a source of pain. First, it's a dukh, a suffering. To earn that pain, we have to go to work, catch trains, catch trams, listen to employers, listen to people, do the thing. It's suffering there. Then in order to maintain it, we're suffering because we're like, oh my gosh, have I had enough? Have I put it into savings? I better not spend it too much here. And we're trying to maintain it. That's a suffering in itself, that type of mental load that we take on. And then there's the suffering in when it goes out. Okay, I have to pay my mortgage, the rent, I have to pay the bills, the car, XYZ. So it's a suffering. The whole cycle is of suffering. And so money is a source of also conflicts in the home. And then, when there's conflict then, and when money comes into the play, then there's a potential for a lot of bad deeds that you would then be accountable for, like not just in this life, but in the next. That's the weights that we need to be considering in this. So money, Maya, only breeds more desire. It's something that once you have it, you just start thinking, okay, how am I going to collect more? So even if that desire is to store it and save and save and save, some people, of course, have the desire then to spend it on clothes and cars and themselves and nice food. But some people have the desire to just keep saving it in their savings account, and they just want to see that savings grow and grow. That's still a type of desire. And so remember what we said right at the beginning, that Maya is only of profit when we earn it, but then we give it. And so it's that constant tyag. We're not attached to the money. We can earn it, but we're not attached to it. When we are not attached to it, then it is the equivalent to surrendering it. And then the last part was just about the youth as well. And I guess a couple of enemies when it comes to this. So the person who is youthful, so they have a young, strong body, who does not know how to manage the wealth. So they gather it, but they don't know how to deal with it. Then they're usually foolish with friends, especially in that young type of life. And, they're pumping his ego, stroking his ego of like, oh yeah, you gave me money and we're all in this together. And then they develop pride in themselves and they haven't learned any vidya. Forget someone who has all four of these, because, that's the reality of where we live. Many people have all four of these. Even just one of these deeply embedded in a person can destroy them, and only then Guru can save them, even if they have just one of these enemies. But in the youth, if we surrender everything, then nothing is as beautiful as that. And so that's where chapter 8 ends. And we need to try and sit and explore these to bring bliss into our life.